Buongiorno. Today we will be speaking also about how different contexts, how different institutions provide built environment education for children. If you remember last time with Professor Angela Millian in our previous lesson, we have named a few different institutions, museums, schools, universities, and the way they organize BE for children. Today we're in one very specific and particular place. This is Rome, MAXXI Museum of the 21st Century Art. And we were very lucky to have had an exploratory guided tour as well as an audio interview with the education department of MAXXI Rome. And based on that, today we will be sharing with you how they use this particular space and place for learning, or in their words, how they use this building as the third educator. Come on, join me. We have been speaking about how different institutions provide built environment education for children. Now we will explore one such institution in a bit more detail. It is MAXXI Museum Rome. I have been lucky to have an interview in the museum with Marta Morelli, the head of education at MAXXI, and Stefania Napolitano, an architect and museum educator. Before we start, please pause this video and introduce yourself with the MAXXI building via museum's website following the link provided on the screen. MAXXI Museum Rome from Italy is a national museum of the 21st century art. In the 1998, the Italian Ministry of Cultural Heritage made an international competition for a museum building to host a national collection of contemporary art. The museum was opened only in 2010 and designed by worldwide renowned Pritzker Prize laureate Zaha Hadid. Her first design had 5 buildings, from which only one was executed. This meant leaving a place for a vast plaza. The complex, today, is situated on the site of a former military barracks, the Caserma Montello. Today's complex is composed of the MAXXI building, the plaza, as well as one restored military barrack, which is a home to MAXXI Educational Foundation. Zaha herself declared that the museum is, and I am quoting, not an object container, but a rather campus for art. This means that spaces flow continuously, pathways overlap and connect so as to make a very dynamic and interactive space. Exhibition rooms, looking as if they do not have a beginning and an end, do not have a prescribed function, and this is because flexible use was the main design direction. In the museum, we can see no divisions and no unnecessary partitioning walls, which make the space a suitable host for any kind of contemporary exhibition. Immediately upon entering the building, in the 3 stories high foyer, the main elements are concrete curved walls, protruding black staircases, and open ceiling that capture natural daylight. Hadid stated that she wanted to achieve, and now I am quoting, a new fluent kind of spatiality of multiple perspective points and fragmented geometry, designed to embody the chaotic fluidity of modern life. The concrete in MAXXI Museum is molded to interpret urban fluxes and materialize them into architectural and structural forms. Besides this clearly constructivist approach to architecture, the only other inspiration and link to Rome that Hadid herself declared is Baroque. Baroque architecture made of sequences of contractions and expansions inspired MAXXI also, in a sense that huge galleries that spread sometimes over several stories meet and flow one into the other through a small connecting spaces that are usually 1 story high. Built environment education programs in MAXXI were established by MAXXI Educational Office. MAXXI Education was established, interestingly, before the museum building was erected. One of its first tasks was to sensitize and prepare the neighborhood for the upcoming transformation. monstrous constructivist building and following incredible urban transformation of the whole Flaminio district. And this district is very close to Rome's city center. So, from 2004 to 2010, the department offered a series of free workshops for children, families, schools, community centers across this neighborhood. Education in general and built environment education was not on Hadid's design agenda. The original museum plan did not have any space devoted to education particularly. Therefore, design and insertion of appropriate workshop space was very important. In the beginning, educational activities took place in undefined spaces across the museum, usually in the space of primarily planned bookshop. Glass cube intended to host the bookshop exposed the participants of educational programs to passers-by, which negatively impacted their concentration, especially children's. Hence, in 2019, MAXXI Edu Labs 1 and 2 were built. They were designed in a participatory fashion with MAXXI Education, one architectural studio Labix, and Foundation Reggio Children. Educational Lab 1 is a glassed and permeable prism located directly behind the entrance. It lives in symbiosis with the entrance hall and is transparent manifesto of the museum's teaching and learning methodology. Vertically arranged series of working surfaces, mobile drawer units, concealed worktops, turn display cases, magnetic and digital walls, tables, stools, and storage spaces can be seen through the glass classroom walls. The most accessible lower level is for the movable chairs and table to enable participants to make them feel comfortable and to arrange learning that suits them the best. Second level is for working materials, wherein lower parts materials are accessible for everyone. In the upper ones, level of accessibility is more controlled, and there dangerous materials are stored, for example, scissors or scalpels. The highest part is for archive and documents. Educational Laboratory number 2 or EduLab 2 is more closed and introspective, enabling communication with the whole only through one single window. It has square modular units of different height that can be combined variously to form seats, worktops, or storage units. As educators explain to us, here one can meet more superior level of difficulty because arrangements matrix of working tools, furniture, and materials is more complex. One does not have only vertical dimension of walls, but horizontal ones as well, where terracing modules of varying height of 25, 50, and 75 centimeters enable participants to use them as seats or tables, thus create an educational tatami according to participants' choices and needs. Both labs are flexible, easily rearrangeable environments that are strategically designed to continuously support research and collaboration over time. When we are speaking about B educational programs, MAXXI has specific educational activities for schools, families, and adults. There are ordinary programs and special projects. Ordinary programs consist of visit explorations, workshops, summer camps for children aged 5 to 11, and guided tours targeting adults. With families, children from the age of 3 can participate. Workshops always consist of 2 parts. First part is exploratory visit, and the second part is hands-on learning activity. Workshops are developed to target specifically kindergarten children aged 3 to 5, primary schoolers aged 5 to 11, lower school 11 to 14, and upper secondary school age 14 to 18. All of them are explained in detail on MAXXI website. For MAXXI educators, MAXXI space and particular place are very important for built environment education. Architecture of MAXXI building with its spaces, relationship between the spaces and the space of the surrounding neighborhood, the proximity of the city center of Rome. MAXXI educators explain to us that they used to establish a dialogue between the pre-existing buildings of military Baroque and the new intervention by Zaha Hadid and the visitors. Striking contrasts are even more heightened first by the placement of a modern deconstructivist building in a place where old military barrack used to be in Flaminio district, very close to historic center of Rome, and second, by an array of differences between MAXXI building and the neighborhood in terms of building structures, materials, colors, lights, sounds, aesthetic, or complete architectural language. Valuing the MAXXI building so tightly and deeply in educational activities, educators explained, was not to celebrate MAXXI architecture, portraying it in any way superior to the neighborhood and the city buildings. They stated, "We use this building as instrument to open up conversation." So, MAXXI building is a work of art. It's the first piece of MAXXI permanent collection. Even if visitors do not completely understand architectural language of MAXXI, educators observe they do have a very strong emotional or even physical reaction to it. And this is no wonder why. When it happens that just an hour ago, visitors were, for example, visiting Vatican. Educators seize this educationally potent moment to talk about the building as a work of art, public intervention, urban implant, and urban transformation of the whole neighborhood. Each visitor needs to be introduced to this new language, which is dramatically different than what would you expect from architecture of Rome. So MAXXI educators use MAXXI building as a source of conversational and thus educational provocation, and this is first important step in any learning experience. The words of Morelli and Napolitano explain educational potential of MAXXI building the best, stating, and I'm quoting now, "Even if we do not consider the learning potential of this building, it is evidently incredibly intriguing, involving, stimulating, and sometimes even overwhelming. So, we welcome all of these inputs and use them to create various kinds of conversations with our visitors, children included." MAXXI educators explained that their teaching and learning with and through MAXXI building is informed by the work of Loris Malaguzzi, the Reggio Emilia and the third teacher approaches. Visit explorations with children usually start outside, trying to involve them in wider conversation about public space as well as public interventions. Later on, immediately upon entering the foyer, they introduce more technical and architectural discourse, relating them always to daily life and daily experience. For example, to illustrate, massive concrete walls dominate the foyer. Educators try to explain concrete molding, comparing it to chocolate molds. They use their hands to feel the tactile properties of concrete and use body movements to follow, trace, and even mimic concrete curvature. They observe and analyze the rhythm of the knots left visible on the walls from concrete molding process, and later on, in the workshop, they use notice details to interpret through creating their own architecture-inspired clothing item with children. Wayfinding exercise, or the way MAXXI educators play hide and seek in a way with children and the building properties, is also a good example of using a building in an educational context. A series of superimposing exhibition galleries varying in size are connected, sometimes horizontally, sometimes vertically. Sensations of disorientation and drifting of various spaces is intentional, which makes wayfinding in the MAXXI building very challenging. Throughout the exploratory visit, children are stimulated to follow energy flow, where each gallery is positioned along to emphasize this flow and to look for hints of energy flux, points where one gallery flows into the next one and where space is compressed. Children follow compression and decompression of gallery spaces, comparing them to inflating and deflating of a balloon. With their hand, finger, eye, and or gaze, they follow a system of concrete blades of the roof, fiber bundles that carry the lighting system, or chase light hints. Changing brightness and vistas, sounds, and temperature are additional hints to be traced. Gradually moving from darker corridor into a brighter glazed gallery overlooking the MAXXI complex plaza, where change of brightness, echo, and temperature is so intense, children have a sense of diving into a swimming pool. Moreover, light vibrations of staircases, climbing steeply inclined pathways toward in Gallery 5, walking down the paths that bring children very close to architectural details, such as roof blades, spark additional questions and conversations. All of these changes of architectural qualities and characteristics intensely impact children's bodily experience and visual perception. Hence, these nods in space are usually places where educators stop with children to have an active and fully conscious experience of space, talk about it, thus metabolize it, which constitute another powerful learning moment. Their workshop for children titled MAXXI in Action probably exemplifies in the best way how they use building for teaching and learning. It was conceived to mediate complex concepts such as navigation and wayfinding, space, sense of disorientation, force fields, energy flows, and so on. Understanding such anti-Euclidean and completely deconstructivist building fluidity, movements of and in space is very challenging. Therefore, MAXXI educators always employ kinetic experience of space and multisensory perception of materials, architectural properties and features. Touching, feeling, smelling, hearing, or moving along walls, inclinations and surfaces. MAXXI educators stated that they use MAXXI and the third educator, not the third teacher approach. They divorce the term teachers purposefully, as they never employ frontal teaching. All the activities are always interactive, engaging both body and mind. The accent is not on collecting the information, but on their reinterpretation. Children always need to sensibly argue and expose the reasons behind their actions, and they focus on the quality of the learning processes and not product. Whether they use building as educational tool, mediator, context depends on the architect, pedagogue, educational context, learning process, and the educational methods chosen. Now, speaking about the methodology of MAXXI educators, they stated that every workshop and every learning activity is situated in their space. The osmosis between the building and the surrounding urban spaces directly influence their methodological approach. Hence, built environment education in general and teaching and learning through MAXXI building, they believe, can start only from the act of seeing and the transformed through a multi-sensory experience of perceiving. Hence, built environment education in general and teaching and learning through MAXXI building, they believe, can start only from the act of seeing and be transformed through a multi-sensory experience of perceiving. MAXXI educators use a variety of educational tools. Drawings and sketches of Zaha Hadid are studied. Pupils are taken on wayfinding tour and later on given to draw their pathway through the building. Created mental maps of a sort pupils use in the workshop to deconstruct real architecture and the perceived architecture, or to associate them with structures they see in everyday life, or to build models based on them. Making photograph also proved to be potent learning tool in MAXXI. Educators explain that their catch is to help children use the photo camera with certain kind of consciousness and specific task put in front. Some of the good examples were photos made by children who were tasked to catch position and atmosphere of the narrow confluences of two galleries and interpret this spatial compression moment by a photo. Children also used body movements to mimic space movements, or in the words of MAXXI educators, they employ kinetic interpretation of space. Children use model making either from paper, wax, or metal cubes to reinterpret MAXXI organic and fluid forms, each material with its properties setting different interpretational challenges in front of children. The educational tools are ever-changing to suit the needs of the target learning audience and even more numerous than the number of workshops organized by MAXXI educational team since 2004. What is constant is insisting on two-part learning engagement with the building. The exploratory tour is always there to mediate essential items of MAXXI architecture through kinetic and sensory explorations, focusing children's attention on the building characteristics. The following workshop and the hands-on activities are there to deconstruct and analyze theme of the exploration and further develop it through manipulation of crafting materials and tools. The key here is reinterpretation of acquired information through manipulation, never a simple imitation of what was seen. At the beginning, MAXXI's ultimate educational aim was to provide visitors and children with tools to orient in space, to read and understand space, while today they put stronger accent on helping children to formulate wider questions, to develop wider sense of criticism, hopefully acquiring consciousness towards their daily landscape. Or, in other words, to become active citizens, curious about what is happening around them, thus wanting to have more knowledge to understand those happenings and to gain more skills and tools to act upon what they see.